How many vaginal exercises are there? If you've been with us for a while, you know that we tend to talk about 27 plus Pompoir exercises, and ever since, the number's only been growing. In fact, in our new book, The Goddess Method, we teach you everything there is to know about this practice, including how you can develop your own Pompoir tricks. This means that, technically, there's as many vaginal exercises as you want them to be. From pulling to rocking, from shimming to rubbing, from whipping to twisting, and everything in between. So check out the Goddess Method book on Amazon and start designing your own divine sex powers today. In this video, my goal is to explain the reason behind this incredible exercise variety and why you should consider incorporating several different skills to your vaginal training. Now, a quick disclaimer. We still don't have a lot of research on vaginal biomechanics, and the studies we do have been performed on very basic forms of Kegel training, not on varied, structured Pompoir training. So take the information in this video with a giant grain of salt. I'm going to be using concepts from sports science and applying them to the vaginal muscles. The idea is to understand the experiences of the hundreds of students of the Goddess Method at a physiological level. Hopefully, this inspires people who are way smarter than me to run studies that can shine a light on this wonderful, but still largely misunderstood practice. So let's rephrase this question. Why are there so many Pompoir exercises? Well, here's my hypothesis. There are so many Pompoir exercises because the levator ani, as in the muscle structure we train during Pompoir, is a muscle that benefits from being trained with a particular high range of exercise variety. And I believe this is the case for three main reasons. Number one has to do with the types of muscle movements there are. The second has to do with the different regions of the levator ani muscle. And the third has to do with the different combinations of movements students can do through these regions and why. Reason number one, types of muscle movements. A muscle contraction is a generation of tension within the muscle cells. Contractions can be isotonic, meaning they create tension by changing the length of the muscle, or they can be isometric, meaning they create tension without changing the length of the muscle. Isotonic contractions can further be separated into concentric contractions, which means they generate force by shortening the muscles, or eccentric contractions, which means they generate force by lengthening the muscles. When we talk about contracting or pulling in Pompoir, we're referring to an isotonic concentric contraction. We also call this type of motion lifting, as it feels like a vertical movement up, and we're shortening the vaginal canal. On the other hand, when we talk about releasing, relaxing, or opening up in Pompoir, we're referring to an eccentric contraction. We're lengthening the vaginal canal. Finally, when we talk about squeezing or gripping, we're talking about a type of isometric contraction rather than an isotonic one. The feeling of squeezing is similar to the flexing of a muscle, and flexing a muscle is essentially an isometric contraction performed against internal resistance. It feels like closing the vaginal canal because of the tension created by your muscles when the flex is pushing against the internal space of the vagina. These three motions, pulling, releasing, and squeezing, are the foundations of Pompoir, which we perform in a variety of different ways and through a variety of regions of the levator ani. Now, if we were to train any other muscle, like the biceps for example, flexing or squeezing would probably not be included as an exercise in your program. And depending on the muscle, your training program might also not include an emphasis on eccentric contractions at all either. This means that out of these three movements, most muscle training programs will be focused on concentric contractions only. Which brings me to my first reason. There are many Pompoir exercises because Pompoir training combines all types of muscle contractions as a fundamental aspect of the practice. Reason number two. Regional hypertrophy. Any Pompoir student will tell you that different exercises activate different regions of her vagina. For example, rubbing involves the lateral regions of the muscle, while rocking involves the anterior and posterior halves. And milking involves all of these regions, but at different depths of the muscle. This is a well-documented concept in sports science called regional hypertrophy. In 2021, researchers compared the effects of Smith machine squats versus leg extensions for growing the quadriceps. While both exercises were similarly effective at targeting the quad muscles, each exercise was better at activating different regions of the quad. The Smith machine showed more activation of both the proximal and mid-quad, while showing very little activation of the distal quad. On the other hand, leg extensions showed less activation of the proximal and mid-quads, but dramatically overperformed in distal quad activation. The bigger the muscle is and the variety of directions its fibers run on, the more certain exercises will effectively target specific regions of it. The levator ana structure of muscles has many different regions, as its muscle fibers run on several different directions. So we could theorize that a similar chart could be created when comparing two completely different exercises, such as whipping versus rocking. In fact, in our course, the Olympus program, students are taught how to identify 12 unique zones of their vaginal canal and the muscles surrounding it. This might sound like an overreach, but it isn't. Let's look at our chest muscles to illustrate this. Just like you have your left pectoralis and your right pectoralis, you have the muscles on the left of your vagina and the muscles on the right. And just like you have the upper head of the pec and the lower head of the pec, you have the muscles on the front and back of the vagina. And just like you have the pec major at the front and the pec minor at the back, you have different levels of depth to the muscles surrounding the vaginal canal. Which brings me to my second reason. I believe there are so many Pompoir exercises that we can master because there are many regions of the levator ani muscles that we can work on, and students are taught to identify 12 of them. Now, just because you can train a muscle using a variety of different exercises, does it mean that you should do it? To answer that question, we need to look at the third reason for Pompoir exercise variety. Reason number 3. Movement combinations and functionality. The last point I want to make has to do with how the different regions of the muscles synchronize when we're working on a given Pompoir exercise. Think of what happens when you lunge forwards with your right leg. Your right glute is completely extended while your left glute is shortened to help you stabilize. Both glutes are generating tension, although most of the resistance is placed on the front leg, working out the right glute way more effectively. The same thing is true for Pompoir exercises. While you do a concentric contraction with the right wall of your vagina, you could be doing an eccentric contraction with the left wall. While you lift the entrance of the vaginal canal, you could be squeezing at the deeper layer of the muscle. While you lift with the frontal wall, the back wall could stay completely neutral. On top of that, you could combine these 3 planes of movement into one single exercise. Now, theoretically, we could do this with any other muscle as well, but we don't do it because it wouldn't be very functional. Think of it like this. It wouldn't be very effective to lunge forwards with the right leg while we're also doing donkey kicks with the left leg. I mean, you could try it, but if your sense of balance is as bad as mine, chances are you'll fall flat on your butt. But with the vagina, it is different. Every Pompoir exercise is much more functional because it creates a unique sensation during sex. Students are encouraged to try these different combinations because each of our bodies is completely unique and each of our partner's bodies are unique as well. We never know which exercise is going to end up becoming our favorite when we bring it into the bedroom. This brings me to the third and final reason why I believe there are so many Pompoir exercises. Students are encouraged to combine the movements of the different regions of the levator ani in a variety of ways, because it is functional for us to do so. So there you have it, the 3 reasons why I believe the vaginal muscles can and should be trained with a high range of exercise variety. I hope this was somewhat informative, or at the very least entertaining, and that it moves the conversation of female sexuality forward so we can have some actual research behind vaginal training for the purpose of pleasure. Because there's nothing sexier than science, am I right?
Stop it. Get some help.
No? Okay then. Make sure to check out our full course on Pompoir, the Olympus program, at goddess.com. and find our brand new book, The Goddess Method, on Amazon. Have a great night, Goddess.